Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to imagine something for a moment. Imagine standing in front of a crowd, 1,000 eyes staring at you, each one filled with expectation. Now ask yourself, what's your first thought? Every time you let someone else's opinion dictate your actions, you trade a piece of your own potential for their validation. It happens so subtly that most people don't even notice it. It starts when you hesitate before speaking up in a meeting because you fear judgment. It continues when you choose a career that seems acceptable rather than one that excites you. It deepens when you start tailoring your personality to fit what you think others expect. And before you know it, the person you are is no longer the person you were meant to be. Seeking approval is ingrained in us from childhood. We're rewarded for being agreeable, for following the rules, for not rocking the boat. In school, we learn that the right answer is more valuable than the courageous question. At work, we see that fitting into the system is often easier than challenging it. And in life, we realize that making people comfortable can be more socially rewarding than standing out. But the problem with this pattern is that the more we seek external approval, the less we trust our own instincts. The price of constantly seeking validation is not just a lost opportunity here and there, it's a gradual erosion of self-belief. Every time you silence yourself to gain acceptance, you reinforce the idea that your voice isn't enough. Every time you adjust your dreams to meet someone else's expectations, you push yourself further from what actually fulfills you. Over time, you start outsourcing your decisions, your ambitions, and even your self-worth to the opinions of others. What makes this cycle even more dangerous is that the approval we chase is often fleeting. The praise we receive today can turn into criticism tomorrow. The people whose validation we work so hard to earn may not even remember the choices we made to impress them, and even when we do receive their approval, it rarely fills the void we expect it to. Because the truth is, external validation is never enough if we don't already believe in ourselves. Think about the most impactful people in history: the visionaries, the leaders, the creators. None of them achieved greatness by playing it safe and conforming to expectations. They took risks, they faced criticism, they embraced the discomfort of standing alone, and because of that, they changed the world. Now imagine if they had spent their lives worrying about what others thought. Imagine if they had let fear of judgment stop them. The world would be missing its greatest inventions, its most powerful ideas, and its most inspiring leaders. Yet, for some reason, we convince ourselves that we are the exception, that our dreams are too fragile to withstand criticism, that our ideas aren't strong enough to be challenged, that our true selves won't be accepted. And so, we continue to trade pieces of our potential for approval that, in the end, won't even matter. The moment you stop chasing approval is the moment you start reclaiming your power. Because when you no longer need permission to be yourself, you gain the freedom to create, to explore, to push boundaries. You start making choices based on what excites you, rather than what impresses others. You begin to trust your own instincts instead of relying on external opinions. And as you do, you unlock a level of confidence and purpose that no amount of validation could ever give you. At the end of your life, will you be proud of the choices you made? Or will you look back and realize that you spent too much time worrying about opinions that never really mattered? The cost of seeking approval is high, but the reward of self-trust, authenticity, and personal freedom is even greater. The only approval that truly matters is your own. From the moment we are born, we are wired to seek connection. It is a fundamental part of human nature. Belonging to a group meant survival for our ancestors, and even today, acceptance gives us a sense of security. From childhood, we learn that approval brings rewards: smiles from parents, praise from teachers, and acceptance from peers. It feels good to be validated, to be told we are enough, to be reassured that we are on the right path. And so, we begin to chase approval, often without realizing it. At first, it seems harmless. We learn what behaviors are encouraged and which ones bring rejection. We adjust accordingly, shaping ourselves to fit the expectations of those around us. We start to associate approval with love, success, and happiness. But over time, something dangerous happens. Our sense of self begins to depend on how others see us rather than how we see ourselves. Instead of asking, "What do I want?" we ask, "What will they think?" Instead of pursuing what excites us, we chase what will impress others. Instead of standing firmly in our own identity, we mold ourselves to fit the approval of the people around us. Social media has only intensified this craving for validation. A single post can bring instant approval in the form of likes, comments, and shares, but it can also bring silence, which we often interpret as rejection. This constant feedback loop teaches us to measure our worth through external metrics. If people praise us, we feel valuable. If they ignore us, we start to question ourselves. Over time, we become addicted to the high of approval and terrified of the low of indifference. But the problem with living for validation is that it places our self-worth in the hands of others. And the truth is, people's opinions are unpredictable. They change with trends, moods, and circumstances. What is celebrated today may be criticized tomorrow. No matter how hard we try, we can never control what others think. And yet, we allow their opinions to dictate how we feel about ourselves. The danger of this is that when approval becomes the foundation of our self-esteem, we lose sight of who we truly are. Think about a time when you held back from expressing an opinion because you feared judgment, or when you pursued a goal not because you loved it, but because you thought it would earn you recognition. These small moments accumulate, and over time, they create a life that is shaped more by external expectations than by personal desires. We become so focused on being accepted that we forget to ask, "Am I truly happy?" Some of the most successful people in history were the ones who dared to stop seeking approval. They followed their own vision, even when it went against the norm. They understood that true belonging doesn't come from pleasing everyone, it comes from being authentic. Because when you are true to yourself, the right people will find you. The ones who appreciate you for who you really are, not for who you pretend to be. Breaking free from the need for approval is not easy. It requires unlearning years of conditioning. It requires the courage to be disliked, to face criticism, to stand alone at times. But the freedom that comes with it is priceless. When you no longer rely on external validation, you gain something far more valuable: self-respect. You start making choices that align with your values, not with society's expectations. You stop performing and start living. At the end of the day, approval is fleeting, but self-acceptance is lasting. The more you chase validation, the further you drift from your true self. But the moment you stop looking outward for approval and start looking inward for confidence, you begin to live a life that is truly yours. We often live our lives under the weight of imagined judgment, convinced that others are watching our every move, analyzing our choices, and forming opinions about us. This fear shapes the way we act, the way we speak, and even the way we think. We hesitate before sharing our ideas, second-guess our decisions, and sometimes even abandon our dreams because we are afraid of what people might say. But the truth is, most people are too caught up in their own world to be constantly judging ours. Human nature is inherently self-focused. We all have our own concerns, insecurities, and struggles that demand our attention. We wake up thinking about our own problems, our own ambitions, and our own worries. The same is true for everyone else. While we might believe that people are scrutinizing us, the reality is that they are far more likely to be worrying about how they are being perceived. The person you fear is judging you is probably just as concerned about what others think of them. This is the illusion of judgment, the false belief that others are watching us more closely than they actually are. In psychology, this is known as the spotlight effect, or the tendency to overestimate how much attention people pay to our actions. We assume that our mistakes are noticed, that our awkward moments are remembered, and that our flaws are the center of discussion. But in reality, most of what we stress about is forgotten almost as soon as it happens. People might notice something briefly, but then they move on. They have their own lives to focus on. Yet, Despite this, we allow the fear of judgment to control us. We avoid taking risks because we fear failure in front of others. We stay quiet in conversations because we worry about sounding foolish. We dress, speak, and behave in ways that conform to social norms, often at the cost of our true selves. But what if the judgment we fear is not real? What if we are holding ourselves back for an audience that isn't even paying attention? Think about the last time you saw someone trip in public. Maybe you noticed. Maybe you even chuckled for a second, but did you spend the rest of the day thinking about it? Probably not. Now flip that around. If you were the one who tripped, you might replay the moment in your head, feeling embarrassed long after everyone else had forgotten about it. This is how our minds trick us. We assume others are as focused on our perceived flaws as we are, when in reality, they are just as distracted by their own lives. This illusion creates a prison of hesitation, where we seek approval that isn't needed and fear criticism that doesn't truly exist. We convince ourselves that we are being judged more than we actually are, and as a result, we limit our potential. We choose safety over authenticity, conformity over creativity, and comfort over courage. The irony is that the most successful and inspiring people are often the ones who refuse to be controlled by this fear. They understand that criticism is inevitable, but they also recognize that most of it is fleeting and inconsequential. They take risks, speak boldly, and chase their dreams without waiting for permission. And because of that, they stand out, and not because they avoided judgment, but because they ignored the illusion of it. If you let go of the belief that everyone is watching and judging you, what would you do differently? Would you finally start that business, share that idea, or take that leap? Would you stop hesitating and start living? The moment you realize that most people are too busy with their own concerns to truly judge you, you set yourself free. The walls of the prison you built crumble, and you step into a life that is dictated not by fear, but by your own desires. Authenticity is one of the most powerful traits a person can possess. It is the ability to show up as your true self, without fear, without masks, and without the need for approval. Yet, in a world that often rewards conformity, many people hesitate to embrace who they truly are. From an early age, we are taught to fit in and to follow trends, to behave in ways that are socially acceptable, to avoid standing out too much. We are conditioned to believe that blending in will make life easier, that it will lead to success, and that it will earn us acceptance. But the reality is, the most successful and fulfilled people in the world are not the ones who fit in, they are the ones who stand out by being unapologetically themselves. Look at the people who have made history, the greatest artists, the most influential leaders, and the most innovative thinkers were all people who refused to conform. They did not adjust themselves to meet the expectations of others. Instead, they embraced their uniqueness and used it as their greatest strength. Whether it was Steve Jobs revolutionizing technology, Oprah Winfrey reshaping media, or Elon Musk challenging the limits of space travel, these individuals did not follow the crowd, they set their own path. What made them extraordinary was not just their talent or intelligence, but their ability to be completely and fearlessly themselves. Authenticity is magnetic. People are naturally drawn to those who are real, who do not pretend to be something they are not. In a world where many wear social masks, where people filter their lives to appear perfect, true authenticity stands out. It builds trust, fosters deeper connections, and creates lasting impact. When you are authentic, you attract the right opportunities, the right people, and the right experiences. You no longer waste energy trying to be someone you're not, and instead, you focus on becoming the best version of who you already are. But authenticity requires courage. It means being willing to be vulnerable, to face criticism, and to accept that not everyone will like you, and that's okay. The fear of rejection often stops people from being their true selves, but the truth is, rejection is inevitable whether you are authentic or not. No matter what you do, there will always be people who disagree with you, who don't understand you, or who simply don't like you. The difference is, when you live authentically, The people who do accept you will accept you for who you really are and not for the version you pretend to be. Many people spend their lives chasing approval, modifying themselves to fit into expectations that were never their own. They pursue careers they don't love, maintain friendships that drain them, and hide parts of themselves just to be accepted. But in doing so, they sacrifice the one thing that could make them truly happy, their own identity. The cost of trying to fit in is far greater than the cost of standing out. Because when you spend too much time trying to be someone you're not, you lose sight of who you truly are. When you embrace authenticity, you give yourself permission to live fully. You stop apologizing for your dreams, your quirks, your passions, and your beliefs. You gain confidence, not because everyone agrees with you, but because you finally agree with yourself. You stop seeking validation from the outside world because you realize the only validation that truly matters is your own. At the end of your life, what will matter most is not how well you fit in, but how boldly you lived as yourself. The world does not need more copies, so it needs originals. It needs people who are unafraid to be different, to challenge norms, and to leave their unique mark. True success and fulfillment do not come from trying to be like everyone else. They come from embracing exactly who you are. Fear is a natural part of being human. It exists to protect us, to keep us from danger, and to help us survive. But in today's world, fear is often misplaced. Instead of fearing physical threats, we fear failure, rejection, and, perhaps most of all, judgment. We hesitate to take risks, to share our ideas, or to stand out because we are afraid of what people will say. But what if we've been looking at fear all wrong? What if the very thing we fear a judgment to is actually proof that we are doing something meaningful? What if fear is not a stop sign, but a signal that we are pushing boundaries? Every great innovator, leader, and creator has faced criticism. In fact, criticism is often a sign that someone is breaking new ground. Think about the most successful people in history: Martin Luther King Jr., Steve Jobs, Oprah Winfrey, Elon Musk. None of them reached success without resistance. They were doubted, mocked, and criticized at every stage of their journey. If they had allowed fear to dictate their actions, their impact on the world would have never happened. The reason they are remembered today is not because they avoided judgment, but because they pushed through it. The truth is, the more significant your work, the more likely you are to face criticism. If no one ever questions, doubts, or challenges you, it probably means you're staying within the limits of what's already been done. But if you're met with resistance, it's often a sign that you are creating something new, something different, something that forces people to think. Judgment is not necessarily a reflection of your failure. Sometimes, it is a reflection of your progress. Fear of judgment often comes from a desire to be accepted. We want to belong, to be liked, to be seen as competent. But when we allow that fear to control us, we end up shrinking ourselves to fit into spaces that were never meant for us. We hesitate before sharing our ideas in meetings. We avoid posting our work online. We keep our true opinions to ourselves, even when they matter, and in doing so, we rob ourselves of the opportunity to grow, to contribute, and to make a difference. But what if, instead of seeing fear as an obstacle, we saw it as fuel? What if, instead of avoiding the discomfort of judgment, we used it as motivation? The moment you realize that fear is just a sign that you're stepping outside of your comfort zone, it loses its power over you. It stops being something that holds you back and starts being something that pushes you forward. The discomfort of judgment is temporary, but the regret of never trying lasts a lifetime. Reframing fear into fuel means recognizing that if people are talking about you, it means you are doing something worth noticing. If your ideas are being challenged, it means they are sparking thought. If you are met with resistance, it means you are not just following the path that has already been paved, you are creating your own. The people who make the biggest impact in the world are not the ones who avoid fear, they are the ones who face it head on. They understand that judgment is a price worth paying for progress. They know that if they let fear dictate their actions, they will never achieve anything truly remarkable. And so, instead of retreating when they feel afraid, they push harder. They take the criticism, the doubt, and the skepticism, and they use it as proof that they are on the right path. The next time you feel fear creeping in, don't see it as a reason to stop. See it as a reason to keep going. Fear is not your enemy, it is your compass, pointing you toward the things that matter most. Let it be the fuel that drives you forward, not the force that holds you back. Imagine waking up every day and making decisions purely based on what excites you, not on what will earn approval or validation from others. Imagine pursuing a career, a passion, or a lifestyle not because it looks good on paper, but because it genuinely lights a fire within you. That is the freedom of letting go, of the ability to detach yourself from the expectations, judgments, and pressures of the outside world and instead live according to what truly matters to you. It is in that space of authenticity where true potential begins. For most of our lives, we are conditioned to seek validation. As children, we are praised for good grades, for behaving a certain way, for achieving milestones that align with what society deems successful. We learn to equate approval with worth, and before we know it, our decisions are no longer entirely our own. We choose paths that impress rather than fulfill. We chase goals that make us look successful rather than feel successful. And the more we conform to these external pressures, the further we drift from our true selves. But there comes a moment when we have to ask ourselves, whose life am I really living? Are the choices we make driven by passion, or are they dictated by fear? A fear of judgment, fear of rejection, fear of not being enough? The moment we realize that much of our anxiety comes from trying to meet expectations that were never truly ours, we gain an opportunity to break free. Letting go is not about giving up, it is about shedding the weight of opinions that do not serve us. It is about releasing the need to prove ourselves to others and instead proving to ourselves that we are capable of creating a life that feels right, not just one that looks right. The freedom of letting go is powerful because it allows us to reconnect with what truly drives us. When we stop making decisions based on external approval, we start asking different questions. What excites me? What challenges me? What makes me feel alive? These are the questions that lead to genuine fulfillment. The people who achieve the greatest success are real, meaningful success, who are those who pursue what energizes them, not what pleases the crowd. They are the ones who step off the well-trodden path and carve their own, despite the doubts of others. There is an undeniable lightness that comes with releasing the need for approval. Suddenly, failure is not as terrifying, because it is no longer a public spectacle, it is simply part of the journey. Risks become more exciting than paralyzing because they are taken for personal growth rather than external applause. Creativity flourishes because there is no longer a fear of doing something wrong. Relationships become more genuine, because they are no longer based on impressing others, but on true connection. The irony of letting go is that once we stop seeking validation, we often end up attracting more of it. When people see someone living fully, unapologetically, and passionately, they are drawn to that energy. True confidence is magnetic, and it comes not from trying to be everything to everyone, but from being fully yourself. The world respects those who respect themselves enough to follow their own path. Letting go does not mean becoming indifferent to the world, it means refusing to let the world dictate who you should be. It means trusting that your worth is not determined by how others see you but by how you see yourself. It means choosing joy over approval, passion over conformity, and fulfillment over perfection. So, imagine that life. A life where your decisions are based on what excites you, where your choices align with your true desires, where your potential is no longer limited by the fear of judgment. That life is possible, and it begins the moment you decide to let go. Oh, often, people wait for permission to step into their greatness. They hold back their ideas, their talents, and their ambitions, believing that confidence must come first or that they need validation before they can take action. They hesitate, waiting for someone to tell them they are ready, worthy, or capable. But the truth is, confidence is not something you wait for, it's something you build through action. Instead of seeking approval, The key to success is to simply start acting as if you already are the person you aspire to be. Think about the most successful people in any field. They did not wait for the world to recognize their potential before they began. They did not wait for someone to approve of their vision. They acted despite the fear, despite the doubt, despite the lack of guarantees. Every leader, innovator, and creator who has ever made an impact did so because they chose action over approval. They understood that confidence is not a prerequisite for success, it is a byproduct of taking bold steps forward. The problem with waiting for approval is that it puts your power in someone else's hands. If you believe you need permission to pursue your dreams, you are placing your potential under the control of others, so whether it be society, your peers, or even your own inner critic. This mindset keeps people trapped in inaction, constantly seeking reassurance instead of progress. But the moment you realize that you don't need permission, everything changes. The barriers that seemed so insurmountable begin to dissolve, and you realize that the only thing truly holding you back was the belief that you needed someone else's validation to move forward. Taking action, even before you feel completely ready, is one of the most powerful ways to build confidence. The more you do, the more you prove to yourself that you are capable. Confidence is not something that suddenly appears when you reach a certain level of experience. It is something that is cultivated through repeated effort, trial and error, and perseverance. Each step you take strengthens your belief in yourself, and over time, the doubts that once seemed overwhelming begin to fade. Many people fear failure because they believe it is a reflection of their worth. But those who choose action over approval understand that failure is simply part of the process. Every successful person has failed, not just once, but many times. The difference is that they did not let failure define them. They learned from it, adjusted, and kept moving forward. They knew that progress is not about perfection, it is about persistence. When you stop seeking approval, you free yourself to take risks, to experiment, and to grow in ways you never imagined. You stop hesitating before speaking up. Before sharing your work, before taking that leap, you begin to operate from a place of self-trust rather than external validation. And as you continue to take action, something incredible happens. You start to become the person you once thought you needed permission to be. The world does not reward those who wait for approval, it rewards those who take initiative. It rewards those who have the courage to step forward, even when they are uncertain, even when they are afraid. Because in the end, success is not given, it is created. It is built through small, consistent actions that accumulate over time, shaping you into the person you were meant to be. So, stop waiting. Stop asking for permission to be great. You already have everything you need to begin. Take action now, and let confidence catch up with you along the way. At the end of your life, when you look back at the choices you made, the risks you took, and the paths you followed, will you feel a deep sense of pride, or will you be haunted by the moments when you let fear hold you back? That question is one of the most important you will ever ask yourself, because, in the grand scheme of things, the only approval that truly matters is your own. So many people go through life making decisions based on what others expect of them. They choose careers that sound impressive, follow societal norms that feel safe, and suppress their true desires to avoid judgment. They spend years trying to meet standards that were never their own, hoping that external validation will somehow make them feel whole. But the truth is, no amount of approval from others can ever replace the deep satisfaction of knowing you lived life on your own terms. Fear is often the biggest obstacle standing in the way of that kind of life. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of making the wrong choice. It keeps people stuck in place, waiting for certainty that will never come. But here's the reality: no one who ever left a meaningful legacy did so by playing it safe. The people who are remembered, the ones who truly made an impact, were not the ones who conformed to expectations. They were the ones who took risks, who ignored the doubters, who followed their own convictions even when the world told them not to. Your legacy is being built every single day, in every choice you make. It is not something that happens all at once. It is the result of countless small decisions, each one shaping the story of your life. And the only person who gets to decide what that story will be is you. You can choose to live a life dictated by fear and approval seeking, or you can choose to live boldly, knowing that the only opinion that truly matters is your own. When you stop seeking approval from others, you gain something far more valuable, self-respect. You begin to trust yourself more. You stop second-guessing every decision and start listening to that quiet inner voice that already knows what you truly want. That voice often gets drowned out by the noise of expectations, but the more you tune into it, the clearer it becomes. It is easy to get caught up in what people think of you, but at the end of your life, none of those opinions will matter. The judgments, the criticisms, the fleeting approval of strangers, and none of it will hold any weight. What will matter is whether you honored your own truth, whether you took the chances you wanted to take, whether you lived a life that felt meaningful to you. And here's the most important thing: it is never too late to start. No matter where you are in life, no matter how many years you have spent seeking validation, you can choose today to start living differently. You can choose to make decisions that align with your true desires. You can choose to let go of the need for approval and trust that your own validation is enough. Because in the end, your legacy is yours alone. It will not be written by the people who judged you, nor will it be defined by the expectations you once felt pressured to meet. It will be shaped by your courage, by the moments you chose to rise above fear, and by the way you stayed true to yourself. When you reach the final chapter of your life, make sure it is a story you are proud to tell. Your life is yours to live in, not for approval, but for purpose. The moment you stop seeking validation, you unlock your true potential. Confidence is built through action, and freedom comes from letting go of fear. In the end, the only approval that matters is your own. So step forward boldly, live authentically, and create a legacy you are proud of. Because when you stop worrying about what others think, you start asking a different question: what do I think of myself? And when that answer is, I am proud of the person I am becoming, that's when you unlock your true potential. Thank you.